mugging up all these topper notes and this conventional way, trying to get new research, new articles and new perspectives.
Physical anthropology, rather than talking more about genetics, there is a version to physical anthropology. If you see the people who are affected by genetic diseases, they are seen as a divine nature.
If somebody has a problem with writing itself, then they should definitely write more. See what is helping you and see what is not helping you. One point in physical anthropology question from a theory part or a tribal anthrop part will not come all of a sudden in the exam hall.
Tell some of the tips or strategy to manage the time in between prelims and main.
This should be taken with a huge pinch of salt. It should not be automatically copied. I spend about, like I said earlier, about 90% of my time just preparing my ethics and my optional. Only 10% of the time I prepared my GS.
Welcome, Benzo. Happy to have you here.
Thank you so much, sir.
After the results, by seeing your name in the list, I was very glad. So, what was your feeling by seeing your name in the top 100?
Sir, I did not see. I was scrolling down the list. I did not see. I reached till 130, 140. Still did not see my name. And then somebody else called and told about the rank. I was very happy, but also very surprised because I expected, if not to clear, or if I clear, then maybe 200, 300 or something. But then 59, very happy, very surprised.
So, expectations wise, you were not expecting it to be that rank?
No, sir, no.
So, having scored 300 plus in anthropology, were you expecting that score after attempting the exam?
I was expecting best case maybe 280 because many questions some questions I did not attempt fully and some questions was very bad. The way I attempted was very bad. Some very easy questions, some questions in which people will normally score, I did not attempt them nicely. So then I was expecting that I would not score as much.
Because you told me that you didn't write Dravidian theory questions
yes, sir.
As well as Neogen fossils.
Yes, sir. So right. Neogen fossils interest, I was doubtful because there was similar Shiva Teja's question in the 10 marker and then will they repeat a Neogen fossil question again 15 marker and so Neogen fossils also I it's not that I did not write but
not up to the
mark. Similarly, Dravidian languages I did not mug up, so I could not attempt that. Archaeology again I did not attempt. I attempted one question in paper 1, but apart from that, very easy questions from archaeology I could not attempt because again, no mugging up. So I depended heavily on other areas such as theory and other areas.
So from this, you're trying to make clear that irrespective of not attempting some of the questions, still if you present answers in a quality fashion, so you're going to get the score. So even this I feel I have observed in other students as well. So can you please tell us your strategy for anthropology for paper 1 and paper 2 in a brief?
Okay. Sir, I did join for a classroom course long back, but I did not find it very beneficial. But then now I'll speak specifically for paper 1 and paper 2 because I wanted to be honest. I just wanted to tell about the classroom course. But then what I did for anthro was mainly go through the toppers notes. So that's what everybody usually does. So paper 1 as well as paper 2, I had the Akshujan sir's book, I had Mandar Patki sir's notes, I had Narayana Amit sir's notes, Vivek Pasme, I bought Karthik sir's that notes, brain tree material. So a lot of these places I did my initial sort of squandering about from building concepts, a lot of YouTube videos, the University of Alabama website. It's a very random, long list of places from where I've tried to build the initial concepts, and then later on I built on that. I added value specifically there are some websites such as EPG Pathshala from where I got some citations and some very good articles. I also used ChatGPT extensively to get names of some prominent anthropologists in some prominent fields.
You don't find, yeah.
Yes, sir. So like that, it was a very mixed bag. It's a very long sort of list, so I can't recall all of them. But then I will provide a list later on.
So, which was your attempt?
This was my 4th attempt, and earlier I cleared, my mains and went to the interview in my 2022, but I could not find my name in the final list. And this year, fortunately so.
Very glad for that. So, coming to paper 2, what was your strategy? Because generally students score less marks in paper 2 and they don't figure out what exactly to do in the paper 2. Even after moving to various places, even after doing enough amount of value addition from conventional sources, still they won't be able to score well in paper 2.
Sir, I think paper 2 is looked by people in a very narrow perspective. They see paper 2 and they might only see archaeology or some Indian anthropology and tribal anthropology. But it's much more than that. It's not just Indian anthropology and tribal anthropology. In Indian anthropology, there is caste, there is village studies, then there is anthropology and how it is impacting policy, nationalism, so on and so forth. Then there is ethnicity, which is a very important topic. Many people ignore it completely because they think ethnicity and tribal anthropology is the same. Well, it is not. Then the first aspect is archaeology, all of that. And then these slight aspects of race and languages, everything. So paper 2 is very diverse in that manner. And what I tried to focus on was to get quality content for areas which people usually do not have, such as, like I mentioned earlier, sir, ethnicity. I referred extensively to sociology, EPG Pathshala sociology, and then again I tried to use ChatGPT to get names of anthropologists from Indian anthropologists, particularly from various areas. There is another website, I'm not recalling the name, but I will recall the name and tell it later. Here there were research articles by year by year, and these are all research done in Indian universities. So Jamia Millia or Kerala University. I try to get that for tribal problems. So unemployment. So very most recent research for all of these from an Indian. I think the name is Sanjeevani or something related to that. I will tell it later. I'm not recalling that name. Like that, I try to add on places where people usually do not have that much content. But again, there's a problem here because some areas like Dravidian languages, race, which is very easy and very easy to score, I did not study as much because I thought it's a very time-intensive process, long time for me to memorize. But maybe ethnicity or tribal problems, very less time and very high return for marks.
So you're trying to say that you have to move out from this conventional way of preparation, that with respect to the material that you're referring to, you have to go beyond what's already existing to make something unique in the paper and which would be rewarded.
Certainly, sir. So in anthropology, when we started preparing, 2019, there was this trend ki take one topper ka notes, maybe it's Pasme sir or Akshay Jain sir, read it in its entirety 100%, do very minimal value addition, go score 280, 290. That is not the case now, and certainly I did not want to do that because that is not my style, because I could not mug up. That is the main reason why I had to diversify to other places. So now, as you rightly said, sir, preparing your own notes or preparing your own content is very much important rather than mugging up all these topper notes and this conventional way. Trying to get new research, new articles and new perspectives, especially anthropological perspectives, to the paper is very important.
Yeah. So can you give a brief about how you attempted the paper in the exam, especially with respect to physical anthropology, that how you attempted, whether you emphasized more on the diagrams or whether you tried to produce physical anthropology rather than talking more about genetics. There is a version to physical anthropology. For example, like suppose you take chromosomal aberrations, and most of the times what we do is that we try to quote which gene has been affecting and what are the factors affecting it. At the same time, what are the symptoms that you see? So we emphasize more on this and we write frequency and so on. But actually, if you see the people who are affected by genetic diseases, in some places or in some tribes, they are seen as a divine nature. And in some places, they are considered as destitutes.
Yes.
So there is a different version, that cultural angle to physical anthropology as well. So did you do anything of this sort, or you have emphasized on this traditional method?
Sir, my physical anthropology was not very strong in the conventional way. So making diagrams for me was easy. It's not very difficult. So that all those aspects were clear. But then I tried to inculcate something in physical anthropology, connecting it to maybe tribal anthropology or something recent in the current affairs or something from other areas of the syllabus. And I recall while we were talking also after mains, we discussed about polygenetic inheritance. And then you had told about how migration, which is a very important aspect of anthropology itself, how that is connected to polygenetic inheritance. While normally when polygenetic inheritance is asked, people just write, okay, the inheritance in which many genes control one trait, and then we have the histocompatibility or MHA. That is the normal sort of
thing,
note. But then these sort of perspectives, this is what we call by anthropological perspectives. This is what actually an anthropologist would think.
Look for in the paper.
Yes. So I try to inculcate that minimally, but I will not say that I was completely happy with my inculcation, but I did try.
So by this itself you went to 303. So if you do everything okay, that would be the top score. Okay, so now tell me that what were the difficulties that you were facing during your preparation?
Sir, I think the lack of a good foundation course, I think, is the most pertinent difficulty, not just for me, but for every aspirant of anthropology right now, because some teachers are there, some teachers might be good at certain aspects, they might not be good at certain other aspects. Some teachers would only teach certain parts of anthropology, because anthropology is a very varied subject. There is biology, there is physical anthropology, there is archaeology, there is a little bit of development as well. So a lot of things are there. Now, the absence of one teacher to teach all of this, at least when I was still doing my foundation course, was the single biggest problem for anthropology. The second biggest problem was I never knew if the value addition, the research and the content enrichment that I was bringing to the paper, would it be valued by the examiner? Because normally if we write it, then people are not accepting it. So, and many
of the people don't trust that by bringing this research papers content to the paper exam, so it would be rewarded. Most of the people don't trust it.
No, sir.
So I think this time, at least from here on, people will start trusting, because this has been reflected in other students' paper as well. Like Navya, which she got 696 rank in paper 2. She just tried to produce all the things from the research papers which has been given in the class, test series and so on. So she was able to get very good score. Like on 142, that's a very good score, I guess.
Yes.
So especially in paper 2, where it's very difficult to improve your score.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
So that is one important thing that you have made clear to the viewers. And now I'd like to ask you that you have been part of 555 program. So what is the best part of it, and please provide a review about it.
Yes, sir. So I joined 555 program after this mains, and it was mainly for content enrichment. But I found it very, very useful. So if I was writing this mains, like the 2024 mains, I am very sure that I would have used a lot of materials from it. The most important aspect of 555 program, I see it in two ways. Number one is conceptual clarity, because when we are in the class and when you teach us, that itself clears a lot of doubts. So otherwise, especially in aspects, areas like physical anthropology or even anthropological theories, it's a little bit difficult to understand everything. So when the teacher is there teaching you, and then when you can ask doubt, I definitely cleared a lot of doubts while I was in the 555. And the second aspect is the enrichment. So I remember I spent about 90% of my time between my prelims and my mains to ethics and optional, and maybe so again 60% of that time just for optional, just for anthropology. It took me a lot of time to get to these research articles. I had to look at citations, then go back to the original article, then read the article, find some 2-3 important names, get the perspective, write it down. It's a long, tedious process. I definitely benefited out of it. But then what a program like 555 brings in, and what you bring in, is these are in your fingertips. You give us these content, research articles in a very brief and succinct way, and in an exam ready way, so we can readily use it in the exam. So those are two aspects that I greatly benefited.
Okay, thank you. And coming to your suggestions to the beginners, what suggestions would you give them?
Sir, I would say for beginners, this is true not just for anthropology but for GS. Make your foundation, make your base absolutely strong, especially theories. Be conceptually very clear about theories. Structuralism, structural functionalism, it might seem very similar, but it's not. It's markedly different thing. So first thing is be very conceptually clear in the whole of the syllabus, not just theories. There is one part physical anthropology and as well as concepts in caste. So many people do not know hierarchical difference. Understanding that concepts, the difference of concepts in the entirety of the syllabus, I think is the most important first step that anybody should take. And second is, in my opinion, because anthropology is becoming more and more competitive, 100% completion of the syllabus before the prelims, if that is possible. Try to finish all the syllabus, because this is something that I did not do, and I would not want this for other aspirants also to suffer from. So if you could finish 100% of the syllabus before prelims, well and good. 60, 70, 80, that is also fine, but then try to finish it as much as possible. But most important thing, conceptual clarity.
Okay, so do you think the 555 Foundation can offer this conceptual clarity? From your experience, what you have seen, you can keep it very genuine to the viewers.
Like I said earlier, many of the concepts where I did not have that much clarity, I could get some more clarity. So in that aspect, based on my limited experience, I certainly do think that a good foundation could be laid through a course like 555.
So what would you suggest the people who have been sent back? Many of the people were confused that they couldn't score well in anthropology. Like they expect that optional like anthro will give them good scores, and by doing good practice they can get good scores. But this time what has happened is that I know many of the students, very good students, were not able to get that good score. So what suggestions would you give?
Sir, I think for them, going by the conventional way to just mug up content in a topper's answer is not going to help. The first truth that they must realize is these toppers became toppers because they made their own notes. So if I didn't make my notes. I have my notes. I've not published it. God willing, I would publish sometime, but in my channel. But then I do think that making these notes is very important. And how did these toppers make notes? They built on some other toppers' notes, but then they added a lot of value.
So they have their own study conducted.
Yes. And that is what people should understand now. Rather than just depending on one book or two books, try to diversify, try to bring value addition, try to bring anthropological perspectives.
Yeah. So I would like to tell some of the good qualities that I have observed in you. So during this process, especially that during your personal issues that were happening, even during that point of time, you were reporting that I would be attending the class the next day, or I'll be completing that in 1 or 2 days. So the sincerity and the commitment towards the exam, that is one thing that I've seen in you, and I appreciate, and I wish the students also replicate the same thing during their process. Thank you, can you suggest any other thing that is in general for students all over, not just specific to anthropology optional?
Sir, I think this one aspect, I've told this before also, is thinking. We do not think as much for the answer. Just like I mentioned earlier, I only wrote 4 tests this time. 1 GS, 2 test, 1 ethics test, and 2 tests for optional, which is my anthropology. What I did at the other time was I was thinking about questions. I saw a question, was thinking the answers, scribbling it down. I knew that I could finish the paper in 7 minutes, 10 marker in 7 minutes. That confidence I had.
Just to interrupt you, that that you could finish in 7 minutes, but this is the issue for many of the people.
Yes.
So it should not be taken in a wrong way that those who cannot finish, they have to practice to do it in 7 minutes. Correct. Or else this would mislead.
Correct. And that is a very important caveat, because I did, in my last attempt, I did more tests. I attempted about 10 to 11, 12 tests. So by that time, and also this time, I was doing daily answer writing every 2 or 3 days. So maybe 2 days once I will write a daily answer sort of thing. And here again, I will time myself 7 minutes. So through these practices, I knew I could finish the paper, I could bring in diagrams, I could write data, I could make flow charts and everything. That was not an issue for me. Now, since that was not an issue for me, now I could devote my time to thinking, bringing in new perspectives. If somebody has a problem with writing itself, then they should definitely write more. But then again, it's a very individual thing. See what is helping you and see what is not helping you. But still, I feel that if people think more. So one example is the anthropological perspectives, and one point in physical anthropology question from a theory part or a tribal anthro part will not come all of a sudden in the exam hall. That has to be thought before.
Has to be done.
Yes. So that aspect I would want to emphasize for not just anthropology students but GS as well as other options.
Okay. So tell some of the tips or strategy to manage the time in between prelims and mains, especially to deal with the GS and optional altogether. So how did you manage your time during that period? So now already prelims has been postponed and the time has been further reduced. So how would you suggest them to manage the time?
Sir, my approach was a little bit unconventional. So I don't know, again, this should be taken with a huge pinch of salt. It should not be automatically copied. I took a gamble and I spent about, like I said earlier, about 90% of my time just preparing my ethics and my optional. Only 10% of the time I prepared my GS, and I'll just briefly tell about what I did for my GS. I made some notes, but these are not notes that people usually make. The topic and then intro, body, conclusion, I don't know. I just divided the syllabus into my Evernote, and whatever value additions I could get from the newspapers or some data, I would just write it down. That was my notes. And then I used to brainstorm questions so that I could use this data that I have. And this is, so I, again, a lot of committees, data, judgments, everything collected. And I used to use it through brainstorming. That is what I did in the 10% time allotted for GS. In the other time, again, this is unconventional. I did not finish ethics before prelims. In fact, I did not know many theories in ethics, so I took a whole course, entire course between my prelims and mains for ethics. I completed that, and I completed a bulk of my anthropology between prelims and mains. This is how my time was devoted. But for an ideal student, I think it should be a 70-30. 70% for ethics and optional and 30% for GS. But that is not something that...
Again, it's up to the individual and their individual pros and cons.
Yes.
Okay, so it's been very glad interacting with you, and at the same time, we wish that as a future bureaucrat, you would be serving the country as best possible. So nice seeing you, Benzo.
Thank you so much, sir.
Keep guiding people wherever you meet.
Sure, sir.
Oh,
Thank you so much.